the hour. Let's crack on. So thank you everyone for joining our webinar. We've got Jeb and Stefan on this expert today. Thank you all for being so generous with your time, Jeb and Stefan. So kicking us off, Jeb, I know you're in LA right now. Tell us what you're doing in LA and a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from the world. So my name's Jeb. I currently run Clearglass. I spun out of a hedge fund as the COO and head of distribution to launch my own basically private placement firm. Represent a few private market funds and a public market fund and some digital asset funds as well. About 5 different funds in total. So raising capital, a lot of travel, but have definitely embraced this new age with digital marketing, building the funnel, making sure that there's the SEO for dropping that as a mnemonic, has to be there. People need to be able to search you and find online content, and it all kind of comes together in this new day and age. It's not just buying dinner and going to conference rooms anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jeb. And, in a kind of post-COVID, pre-monkey flu world, it's becoming, our behaviors have changed so much. So yeah, thanks for that intro, Jeb. Stefan, I don't know if you need an introduction, but why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in Japan?
Well, good evening from Tokyo. Well, I mean, I've been in the sort of alternative investment industry for 25 years now, in and around it. Most of it here in Tokyo, but before that I was in London as well. Been based in Tokyo since 2004, so we're talking 18 years here now. And I've been working for hedge funds, for prime brokers, for distributors, for gatekeepers. Now I run my own single family office, allocating to hedge funds and other alternative investment funds like VC and PE and real estate. So quite a lot of diverse experience in that space. And then in 2005, 17 years ago, I founded the Hedge Funds Club that we still run, which is basically getting investors and fund managers together across the region, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Sydney. A lot of things we do online as well, with news and interviews to try to educate people about the industry with a specific APAC focus. So I have a lot of different perspectives, I guess,
right,
from the different parts of
the industry. And for the audience, yeah, for the audience, we've had about 260 people registered today. Stefan and me share a common interest in Scandi metal music.
Everyone does, don't they?
Everyone has to, right? I mean, that's the law. So there's a little story behind that, but we'll go into that. We'll go into that if time permits. So a little bit about ProFuncom. I'm the founder of ProFuncom, and our goal is to help asset managers identify new investment and redemption risks through digital marketing. That's what we do. We've been going almost 20 years now. I'm the founder of the business. We've got about 200 plus users of the product spread globally. So yeah, it's very, very lucky, that we've built a business around, taking all people's marketing activities and basically analyzing that and then delivering that to the sales team. So here we are, the investor-centric world with digital marketing. So I was just curious to know, Stefan, from your own experience, how have you found people getting closer to potential investors over, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and how has those behaviors changed?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a mixed bag. And I actually did a little survey a few months ago of fellow Japanese investors, how if they accept Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams meetings and that kind of various video calls. And it was, again, very mixed there, where a lot of people said, yes, we will do the meeting online, but allocating, well, we have to do on-site due diligence. And some people will say, no, we can do it all digitally. So it really varies when it comes to local here in Japan.
Right.
And I think some people have taken, really evolving, obviously out of necessity,
Mhm.
but also some people are stuck in the old ways. So I find it, I mean, one thing that I notice as an allocator when people are pitching me is it's some people have not understood that, you can use digital in a different way. It's not
Yes.
just sending stuff. And obviously you're an expert in that field and you'll go into that. But I think in my mind, it comes down to a lot to, digital comes with various tools that you can use, but the fundamentals, the principles of marketing and asset raising has not changed. It's the same thing, but you have better tools now. You have analytics that you can use and tailor things and make it more efficient. But I think some people misunderstand and they think, oh, we can just email everyone in the world and we can do video meetings all over the world with anyone. And it's sort of like scattergun approach rather than being targeted. They just think, so I think that they misunderstand the opportunity. So I think a lot of fund managers need to get educated around this, what investors want. They just think what's efficient for them, not what's actually needed by the investors.
Yeah. I mean, Jeb, is that something you've seen as well, pre and post pandemic, how people are reaching out to investors?
Yeah, I think it probably almost echoes exactly what Stefan had mentioned. You do still have some of the allocators we reach out to that are requiring on-sites and are doing Zoom to sort of meet the managers or make initial introductions, etc., but still kind of stuck to some of the older techniques of still building that relationship. But you can understand when the checks are much larger. I think in the ultra high net worth single multifamily offices, they're coming along much faster. Getting more keen on the digital space, and I think a hybrid approach is probably what I've seen most now. But to Stefan's point, it's utilizing those tools and people like ourselves educating those people on how to utilize the tools, how to reach out, how to make it more efficient. So instead of being on the airplane to a particular city to meet an allocator 5, 6, 7 times, it may only be one time at the closing dinner before the subscription doc comes, and the rest of those interactions can happen digitally through appointed marketing, whether it be a webinar like ourselves, a group Zoom, educational material that gets put online regularly and is pointed at what that audience is looking for. And it's a combination of all of these things that I think is winning. But yeah, there are some that are still going to need to, just due to investment committee and age of investment committee maybe, or bylaws and docs and whatever, are still going to have to get in the office physically. So it's slowly coming along, but compressed in the timeline given the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, the more we talk to our clients, they're almost finding that not only and then this kind of brings me on to the next slide, is that the transformation people are going through is awareness and consideration of the whole investment process is being done completely digitally now. Whether it's thought leadership pieces, whether it's website, events, social, press, inbound, outbound marketing. And I know these were like dirty words, that, portfolio managers were like, no, we're going to do none of that. We're going to go to the polo, we're going to go to the tennis. We're going to get on a plane because we feel like we're being busy when we go and meet people. The investor journey has become completely digital now, and what we're finding is that the awareness and consideration part is almost exclusively being done digitally now, even if it is online, offline events. There is such a big digital component to it. And yet there's a point where, you're going to due diligence and the sales pitch, and onboarding is kind of on-prem, but there's a lot more work and work / investment / learning that has to kind of go into digital marketing. And it almost seems like the skill set and the tools that people are using are slowly evolving. So people will start out with very much generic products like, I put Salesforce in that, a generic product like Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, ClickDimension, MailChimp. And as they kind of go through their journey, they actually realize they kind of need, professionals like yourself and professional products to really focus in on the kind of asset raising process.
Right.
Are you, Jeb, finding more and more companies actually investing in SEO and website and the touch points?
When you say companies, I find that some of the managers that have been around for a while, or coming out as senior portfolio managers at senior shops have never been in that part of the business cycle, and so we're finding it very difficult to make those changes. I think surprising enough though, the clients I have that are in the digital asset space are all about it. They embrace it. They're doing all that, but that's their whole ecosystem, right? That's what they know. So it's almost a night and day contrast, a yin and the yang, to see those two worlds and how they operate, and how the traditional manager that's coming out of a big shop is starting to see that and understand it, but still coming up the hill slowly, where the digital asset managers and the new crypto guys and whatnot are just embracing it completely and understanding it.
Sure, because that was done, if people are coming from the big shops, that was all done for them anyway.
Right, exactly. So they don't understand, or they've really been hands off to that. They don't understand the process, and it's all part of hanging your shingle. You've got to, you can't just go up, I don't know what to do, I'm just going to put up return, and the money, the money's going to come. They realize quickly that doesn't happen.
No, that
I think there with the any fund manager in the capital raising game obviously needs to have good returns. Good returns are a given. And this is where it's so puzzling when, I get all these emails from people like, oh, we're up 42% or whatever it is. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant until I know who you are, why are you doing this, what is this about?
Right.
Just throwing away, round numbers is just a waste of time. And I think some people invest in systems, they invest in consultants to help them and get the digital journey going, but they forget the content part, where it's like, well, unless you have a good story, some storytelling, some really smart way of doing good content, then it doesn't matter. It's a waste of time for them and money.
Yeah, and Ray Dalio says, talk about your attitude to risk, talk about your investment strategy, then tell me about your performance. And when you're talking, this is a David Attenborough line, enlighten, entertain, and educate.
Right.
And and this is where the dark art of copywriting is so important. And as you said, Stefan, storytelling. So for a hedge fund, Stefan, what would be a good story?
There has to be something, background. Like I've worked a lot in the macro space, and someone comes to me and say, I used to be an economist at a central bank, like Bank of England or something. Then I launched a macro fund, and okay, well that kind of makes sense. And you start listening, and you're thinking, oh, Bank of England or whatever it might be, But it doesn't have to be something directly linked to the strategy either. It just needs to be something interesting, something apart from numbers.
Right.
It could be coming out of a shop, like demonstrating pedigree, saying like, oh, I've been working for George Soros, now I've launched my own thing, and then people pay attention because something that sticks out. Or someone just emailing saying 42%. It's like, well, who cares? And for me, it's also, I think business risk is something a lot of investors think about, which means numbers, if they look too good to be true, that can be a problem. I mean, I remember working with John Paulson a number of years back when he was, you know, the biggest star in the industry, and he had returns of 800% the year before. And I sat down with him in New York, and I told him, okay, when you come to Japan, I was like, don't talk about the 800%. I mean, it's true and that's great, but you know, that's gonna worry some people, because he had something like an average of 14% net per year if you took away the outlier year. And I'm like, that's great, 14%. That's a great story. They love that, you know. And he obviously raised a lot of money, and he did very well until he pared down, and now he's sort of running a family office, I understand. But, you know, I think what he thought was a selling point is sort of like a negative, because it's too big. It's just a number that doesn't work. So I think some people are too focused on that. And I think it's more of a Western thing, Western fund managers coming to Asia, you know, if I can generalize, which I do. So it's yeah, I think, you know, you need to be, but from Japan is the opposite. You have Japanese fund managers who are very Japanese who will say, oh, I'm no good, you know, I'm just doing my best, but it's not that good, you know. Okay, well, if you turn up in New York and you say that at a CAP intro event, that's not going to help you. If you put that in a digital marketing format, you're writing pieces, things, oh, I'm no good. Okay, well, why should they invest with you then? So that's the other extreme. So a lot of these people need help.
Sure. Yeah. And I know a lot from your LinkedIn posts, excuse me, and Stacey Haver also talks about authenticity in how you communicate. You want to share a little bit on that, Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, it's being real. And I tend to say, when people say to me, like, you know, it's good that you're being you. And I'm like, well, I can only be me. Everyone else is taken. It's sort of like, you should always be you. And I think this goes back a bit to, I mean, I have a background with some of the big banks, and then it comes with legal and compliance. When you're in big banks or big asset managers, legal and compliance tend to kill creativity. They tend to kill marketing. Anything that's good will be killed. And when you then launch your own fund, or, you know, something smaller, some kind of boutique, you need to really show you know, the opposite of what the big guys tell you. And that's the way you stand out. And I always think, okay, well, if I'm just me, then I'm being honest. Some people won't like it, some people hate it, but that's okay. You don't need everyone. You just need the people you want to do business with. Like you and I connected over Scandi Metal. I had Megadeth, you know, one of the biggest American metal bands, Grammy Award winning nonetheless. You know, I happened to be good friends with some of the members, and then they were here on tour 5 years ago. I was backstage with the band, put something up on LinkedIn, and two major Japanese investors contacted me the day after saying, like, wow, you know Megadeth. Oh, let's have a meeting and talk about hedge funds. So there's nothing to do with it, but it's real me, and me showcasing, here's what I do, and then people connect with it, because it's kind of unusual in a way. And a lot of people don't do it, so you stand out. So I think whatever your thing is, you do use that.
I mean, as Steve Jobs says, think different, right? Yeah, absolutely.
But but Paul, at the end of the day, right? And I think Stefan brings up a great point. It is a relationship business, and by doing that, you are developing a relationship because you're meeting people that like the same interests, like the same hobbies, and want to be around you. And as an investment, as we all know, is a relationship experience. It's almost like a marriage, and it's a courting and dating, and you're going to want to date and court with people that have the same interest as you, and you can go break bread together and have a pint or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think, you know, how you communicate, how you build those relationships up. So we did a study with the Saturi guys. I can never get their name right. And we kind of, this is kind of just in the kind of middle of COVID. And this data still holds, actually, is we said, you know, what is the best way to distribute fun content? And most managers we talk to says, oh, we're going to build a website. It's all the website, and, you know, and we'll come to that in a minute. But actually, it turned out that, you know, email was by far people's preference for receiving information. And that's a bit like, you know, hey, Paul, you know, the 90s called and they want their fax machine back. And it's like, well, actually, the great thing about email and is, it's, you can put detailed content, it's actually not that intrusive. You can store it the way you want, and you don't get kind of caught up in, instant messenger fatigue, Teams, Zoom, Skype, take your pick. And you can't even file that information. And what we kind of found as well is that what people were interested in for a fund manager, from a fund manager, was product and strategy updates, investment approaches / attitude to risk, managers' perspectives on the market. And this is kind of the thing, Stefan, where you said, yeah, if you have a contrary view, well, that's fine, because if your view is what everybody else's view is, you'll end up where everybody else is, and portfolio ideas, and so that was quite interesting, and because most managers would just talk about performance, and once you've got these parameters in place, like what content do they want, how do they store it, what channel do they want it on, is then what frequency did they want it? And that was really surprising, is that people were actually comfortable receiving this information on an as-need basis, or cataloged, cataloged as in a weekly journal, which I kind of fits your world quite well, Stefan. And that was really interesting. And using this kind of information that we've kind of got now, it seems like that whilst websites and webinars and kind of Zoom have their place, we're all kind of going back to that kind of a boring email, but it seems to have, in our world, we've doubled our business through this kind of COVID period, is because people are just finding that people just want to receive information through email, as well as the website, but also the ability to aggregate that data. So the marketing team can pass that information on to sales teams to say, here is a set of behaviors. We think these behaviors are people who are looking to invest, give them a call. So, it kind of comes a full cycle. And yes, as you mentioned earlier on, Jeb, people, pray and spray their emails. Well, actually, there is actually some structure and process you can apply to that kind of pray and spray mechanism with the content and the analytics that come back.
Yes.
So that is kind of, we've kind of beat that one to death a little bit. But, moving on to the next part of this, which is, again, back on content distribution, is how important, and this is, Jeb, your point as well, is people's websites are and being found. So I know you touched a little bit on SEO, Jeb. Do you want to take that a little further for the audience?
Yeah, no, it's I've learned, and I had to ramp up on this quite quickly, understanding the algorithms, right? And the email campaigns, as we all know, are important to go out and not the spray and pray, but actually direct it. It's to Stefan's point, right? Putting pertinent information, knowing what investors are looking for, and them being able to get their hands on it and go back, whether that's links to data rooms, et cetera, as you talked about the entire structure of what's coming across, but their ability to go back, reference, make notes, and do that. But then they also want to validate that who you are. They've not met you. They don't know who you are. They need to get a sense of who you are. And that's where SEO comes in. And that's where your website might be the foundation of what you have and brings everything together, but then your social media should link up to that. If they find you on, like this webinar, which was obviously advertised tremendously through your efforts via LinkedIn as an example, that brings back to the validity that there's an existence and that these people are thought leaders, and I can find on social media what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they're making posts. Webinars like we're on now, which was advertised via social media and probably linked back to the website. that it was there. And then investor updates that come out, how do they normally get delivered? Via email, are going to come across. And it kind of then that whole cycle and intricacy and algorithms that are then bouncing off each other to give you a presence and actually elevate you. If somebody does a Google search for macro hedge fund managers, brings you to the top of that list and allows people to recognize, one, that you do exist, two, that you have a presence, and three, that you're a thought leader, and why they should pick you out of, you know, the 16,000 other hedge funds and et cetera, alternative managers that are out there. You've got to make yourself available and give yourself that digital presence when people will search you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing that it ties into is if you create if all your content points back to your website, you have one version of the truth that you can deploy in social media, webinars, investor updates, or email campaigns. So Stefan, you are the master of LinkedIn. You know that. Right? You don't have to take you can't deny that. How have you found the social media element, which is obviously, you know, when people talk social media, they talk TikTok, they talk Insta, Snap, stuff like that. But in the business world, how have you found, you know, with the hedge fund group that you've created, how has that evolved kind of post pandemic?
Well, I mean, we had to put a stop to the in-person events for basically more than 2 years because it was just simply not possible to do it. And that was the main avenue. Before COVID, we used email and the website and LinkedIn and you know, as a way to promote the events, because the events was the thing. Then all of a sudden, COVID hit and you realize, okay, we can't do events for a while. And a couple of months later, you realize, okay, for a couple of years maybe. And obviously, we're still in COVID. It's starting to look better, but, you know, it's still not over. So there's still issues.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when I realized we have to beef up content. We have to keep people connected. You know, a website, you don't keep people connected. You can put up interviews, articles, news.
Great point.
You know, it's just pushing things in a way. I mean, and that's where LinkedIn is a difference, because you can put things up, people will share those articles, or they'll comment on them, or they like them, and that is a very, very good complement to a website. So you need both. And then, of course, 2 years ago, I started to do a proper email newsletter going out every other Monday. And that serves as a reminder, because some people like me, I'm on LinkedIn all day pretty much because it works. It's good for my business. It works. Some people are never on there, but they get an email, like you said, email works.
Yeah.
So getting an email newsletter, they will then see, oh, I want to read this interview, and then they will read that. But unless they got that email, they would never do it. Then you have regional variations, like here in Japan, a lot of people don't use LinkedIn. That's why we have to do Facebook, you have to do email, and a lot of face-to-face. You have to go and see people, old traditional way. And that's obviously been a problem with the pandemic. Now it's starting to look a bit better in Japan, but it's still, you know, 2 weeks ago it was 100% masked in Japan. Now maybe 95% masked. That makes it very difficult to have proper meetings. Of course, you can still meet some people. There are still some events happening, but there are so many compromises. So you really need to evolve your digital sort of activities in order to keep momentum going and not lose everything. But I think it's very important to trying to, especially if you, like most of us in the industry, work across more than one country, one jurisdiction. You need to be able to reach a wider audience within that niche. And obviously the hedge fund industry is a global industry. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. What I really like there is the quality, because you can see exactly, I mean, essentially you have everyone's bio. Everyone who likes your thing, you just check out their bio. I mean, compared to Facebook or other things, Twitter, you can't really know too much about the people in the same way. With LinkedIn, you can professionally see, okay, we have a good audience, I'm talking to the right people, this is great. So that's why for hedge fund managers or private equity managers, that type of thing, really use LinkedIn.
Do you, in both of you, it's a question of both of you, Jeb and Stefan, have you come across compliance issues when you've been on LinkedIn?
For other people, yes.
I think Stefan, as a family office, probably not too much. I think myself as a registered broker dealer, absolutely right. There's governing rules by our SRO body of FINRA and SEC rules on marketing and things like that you have to obviously make sure you're in compliance with, and you can't be seen to be advertising a particular fund, et cetera. And so it's knowing that type of rules that you play in, but that leads back to the foundation of the website, right? And like you said,
Right.
the truth and the one version of the truth. And whether you have a website as a fund manager that has a firewall and you have to have a password to get through, it's the social media that leads them there, right? And it's the authenticity, the authentic presence of yourself and that people are interested in like you, that brings them back to that foundation and everything. And I think the old school way, as Stefan was mentioning, my daughter was on vacation here in the States recently, and we were staying at one of my uncle and aunt's house, and they had a library of encyclopedias. And my daughter's 9, and she goes, Dad,
Wow.
what's that? I go, it's encyclopedias. And she goes, what's an encyclopedia? And I said, it's Google before the internet was created. That is how we had to get our information before Google existed. And that resonated with her. But, now there's all of these digital tools like an encyclopedias, where before you had to physically go there. You had to put a prospectus in the mail, marketing materials in the mail, and wait 5, 7, 10 days or whatever for it to get somewhere, or longer if it was internationally. And I think we basically are doing the same tasks, but we're doing it much rapidly, reaching a much broader audience, and pulling it. You still have to pull it all together.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But the interesting thing is, and I heard this, and I thought this is quite a clever retort on digital marketing. He said, when you FedEx a prospect, your prospectus, the open rate is generally 100%. And I thought, you know what? You've got me there. Yeah. And you can't scale it, but you get the point. So, and going back to doing things old school, creating content is an act of discipline, where you've actually got to have the ability to, and this is our ProFuncom marketing campaign, our email campaigns, our LinkedIn campaigns, our Twitter campaigns, our webinars, our website, and our monthly, quarterly activities are all laid out in good old Excel, and we just make sure we get them done. We've just got a question come in, so that's interesting. Right, to somebody, first name anonymous, second name attendee, is there any validity to the idea of scarcity value and exclusivity when marketing a fund? Clients may like to think they're getting access to a special fund, which not everyone can access. If you are highly active on social media, could it dilute the exclusivity factor? Yeah.
I want to say no, but with the holdback that you still, a fund manager needs to be, a PM needs to be focused on what they're doing and not, in the media and everything constantly. You got to know that they're doing what they're there to do, and which is pick good investments, and that takes time. But I also think they're not scarcity is the right word, but some bit of capacity constraint, maybe, that it's not just gonna keep free flowing, right? But I think trying to pretend that you're something that you're not before it's built is probably not the right way to go. And Stefan as an allocator will be much more geared up to speak on that, I think.
Well, I think it's the wrong kind of approach, because what is this about? It's about a fund manager meeting a suitable investor, coming with a solution to a problem, to then start being arsy and sort of say, oh, we're so exclusive, you can't get in unless you sign now. Or it's like, well, it's not Louis Vuitton we're talking about here. I mean, it's just, I think it's someone that gets it wrong with what are you trying to do here?
Right.
And go back to what you said, capacity, that's one thing. You want to have a capacity, you know, if it's a small cap, yeah, okay, well, there must be a capacity issue. Okay, well, then you can be honest about it and sort of say, okay, we have a bigger than that, we're going to screw up the strategy, basically. Well, that makes sense, but that's not scarcity. That's really talking about how the investment strategy works. So I think one should be very careful with trying to be too gimmicky or too, you know, it's much more being honest and where it makes sense. Here's what we do. Here's how, you know, we can solve your problem. And like, this goes back to what I said earlier with this, you know, not being sort of trying to target everyone. This should be, you should focus on the key investors that this makes sense for. And that's the sort of thing you can find out by being on LinkedIn and things, building relationships, and then you realize like, maybe we can target family offices in Singapore because they seem to like this. It seems to be a good fit. Okay, well, let's go do a trip to Singapore, perhaps. That kind of thing. Instead of just, I mean, I get, I don't know, 20, 30 email pitches per day from various managers. And most of them, I just look at them, I was like, wow. And a lot of them start with the line, we're confident, or we think this will be a good fit for your portfolio. And I always think like, how the heck do you know that? You know nothing about my portfolio. Because I run a single family office as private. You cannot find that information anywhere. So if you have that information, it means it's fake. It's not real. So you don't know. And you sending an email to me claiming that you think or you know this, that just, for me, is like delete, because it just means that they're lazy, they don't care, they're just, you know, contacting anybody.
Right. Super, great question. Thank you very much, Anonymous. So the other thing to look at, you know, when you're kind of doing content, and you know, and you've nailed it on the head, Stefan. I mean, the rehearsals we did obviously worked. Is the ability to know what's working, and with the tools that are available out there, and this is our tool, and there's a section of our tool. You've got the ability to see, you know, your digital marketing, you know, what's working over a time period, and the funds that are coming in. So you've got a way to build correlation. You can actually also have the tools allow you to say, okay, by fund, you know, what themes are working. So in this case, ESG, tech, long only, growth funds, and then it's split down in by geography as well. So going on by what Stefan just said, you can actually see which funds. So if you want to know where the ESG fund is performing well, it'll actually tell you, okay, it is in Switzerland and the UK that is performing well. Great, let's make a trip. And you can also have the ability to see, you know, globally, again, where the spread of your interest is for your funds, and by individual. And this is the real thing where, like, you know, our product kind of comes into its own and why it's specifically built for fund managers. You can actually go into a fund and actually see who are the people that are showing an interest. Incredible. It's one of those things. It looks simple, but, you know, when I started this project, I actually had hair. So it's, you know, a job well done is when no one knows you've done it. And it's a little bit like that. So what it does do, it really helps you build a real strategic view on your marketing, as opposed to tactical stuff, which is like, oh, get the fact sheet out, let's do this monthly call. It's less tactical and more strategic. So, right, we've just got another question come in before we jump into the next section. Thank you, attendee. They said thank you. Right, so moving on to the next section. It is aligning sales and marketing. And this is really where, you know, the biggest challenge is budget, right? And how do you get budget for marketing? And because the budget ultimately sits with the sales team, the portfolio manager. So when you are sending out fact sheets, invites, website, social, everything we've spoken about, the real challenge is delivering that to sales teams. And that's where the technology and the tools come in. So what our tool allows people to do is to implement what Jeb's been speaking about, Stefan's been speaking about, and actually identify who those individuals are within your CRM. And once they're in your CRM, you can then categorize them based on their behaviors. Are they investors who are looking at funds they're not invested in? Are they investors who are not reading stuff? Are they prospects that are actively downloading fact sheets, but you haven't spoken to them? Or are they people who have not read anything for the last 6 months, but in the last month are reading stuff? And this, really moves the kind of marketing function down into, the funnel building and into the sales process. And there was an article today in Bloomberg, and Bloomberg was saying, managers to start thinking about not spending on marketing, which is insane, And as somebody who's lived through Black Monday, the dot-com crash, Lehman Brothers, the whole fiasco with the Bank of England when we came out of the ERM, when things go bad, 3 things happen. 1, no business class flights for anybody. 2, no biscuits in meetings. And 3, people stop spending on marketing. All those 5 cycles, those that spent on marketing, and not just, spray and pray, but really using the digital data to really target people, actually got huge benefits. And on the ProFuncom website, we've actually collated all this data, and we've actually shown what fund size does the best spending on digital marketing during a downturn. So that's a bit of interesting information. So that's aligning the sales and marketing process. I don't know, guys, if you found, this contrary view of marketing actually beneficial.
Yes, but I would say one of the things that I found being at, coming from my initial foray into the hedge fund system was through Citadel. And so that was a very large organization that did all of these things obviously very well to continue through their success, even through the drawdown when I joined in 2008. Then on to boutiques. And what I found, in a boutique where dollars are hard to come by, it is an argument that you've got to set up initially and from the beginning and say, we need to have X% of a budget every year, or a hard number that doesn't move. Marketing dollars need to be there. We need to be in front of the clients or prospective investors as much as we need a Bloomberg terminal and analytics and everything else. It is just part of that entire system that needs to be there. And for those of you on the webinar that might not sit in a PM role and sit in either an IR, a marketing, business development, whatever that is, or a COO or something like that, that wears many, many hats across Asia, is to make your voice heard and and know that you've got to put that in front of your founders or the rest of your partners and get that cut out of your sleeve so that you can continue through up cycles, down cycles, when the fund is taking drawdowns. Even more so, to your point, when you're taking drawdowns, the more so you want to have a marketing plan and a distribution plan to be able to communicate with investors your strategy, why it's not working right now, and what the investment team is doing to mitigate that, so when the cycle does turn, they can take advantage of it. And that's marketing.
Yeah, and that's internal marketing, right?
Yeah,
that's the next section. And basically, when you're doing internal marketing, that is convincing people within the business what things are working on the marketing side. So how's the website performing? How is social performing? How's email performing? How are they spending month on month? And the real challenge in a fund is that, the more channels you add, the more inefficient the marketing team becomes, because you're pulling data from, your social feed, from Google Analytics, from your email tool, and you can't trend and you can't make any, strategic decisions on what's working and what's not working. And you can't convince the business you're doing a good job. And again, that's why tools like ourselves give you that ability. But what's really important as well is the ability to see what has marketing done for the business lately. And, you know, this is part of our product, which people really love, because it gives the marketing team and the sales team the ability to see from the last month's marketing activity, how many new prospects have been generated, how many are active, how many have we reached out to, and how many new opportunities have we created. And this kind of information used to be, I get these terms wrong, used to be qualitative, but now they can be quantified. And again, it really helps that marketing spend, because it's very hard to spend more money on something you don't believe is working. And, you know, when a marketer who is a creative is trying to get money from a PM or a CEO who's generally, you know, an economist, you know, they want to see hard numbers. And this is a really, really good way to actually make that internal marketing point. I've got another question coming, so thank you for these questions. No, good question. What do you think are the best commercial measures of marketing success? How can we prove sales has that? How can we prove to sales that marketing helped bring assets in? And literally, I think I've just answered the question there. It is through analytics, and there has to be a way, whether it's your CRM, whether it's your broker dealer, whether it's your portfolio system, that is able to track when somebody converts from an investor, a prospect, into an investor, or they're actually, you know, making more investments in the fund. That's a topic for, you know, that's a much deeper topic, but in answer to your question, the impact you're having on raising AuM is much easier when, you know, to do it with a tool like I've just demonstrated. And again, going back, sorry, Jeb, you're saying?
No, I was going to say, coming from, you know, previous seats where I was a COO and had to go in and ask for these dollars, if I had, and I didn't have anything as fancy as that, but if I could, to your point, come in and show the interactions, the uptake, how many more people were pulling into, and I hate to use funnel, into that marketing funnel, and getting a number of emails out and having them clicked, and then people visiting the site and seeing the site analytics, having all that and pulling it together, you can make the case and argument with facts that it is working. And then the ultimate end result is manager meetings and dollars from subscription docs based on those meetings. So.
Super. Yeah, absolutely. I hope that answered the question. Well, everybody, I think we are at the end. So if you've got any more questions, we've got 50 minutes to go. If anybody wants to ask any more questions. I think we've either, you know, bored everybody into a stupor, or everyone is eagerly tapping away, Stefan and Jeb.
Could be. Well, I think one important thing on the marketing side is also having buy-in from the sort of founders, because I can see it as an allocator looking at teams, the way they're presented in a pitch deck or on a website or on LinkedIn. When you see, here's the founding team, we got the CIO, the chairman or whatever, head of research, and there's no marketing person there. Then you have some marketing junior sort of appointments, and then you think, they don't take it seriously with dealing with investors, getting investors. Very telling how you present it. So I think a smart fund management company, especially if you're a smaller boutique, make sure you present IR and marketing as a strategic thing. Even if you're two people, one of you should have marketing in the title kind of thing. Or it really makes a difference how it's viewed by people who are going to be serviced by these people.
I've got a question from Rob. Hello, Rob. So question to all the panelists. How would you help a fund that is hard to bucket and has no direct competitors to reference against? That's the dream, isn't it?
You got a lot of USPs then. It's highlighting all those good things that are different, because if it looks the same as everything else, then you have nothing to show.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, ultimately, it's, you know, clients of ours who've got esoteric funds. You know, there's always a competitor, and we've learned the competitor is not to invest. That's the competitor. No action is the competitor. So it really is the case of building, marketing automations to kind of drip feed thought leadership, your attitude to risk, your investment strategy, your update, and just trending, over time, who is showing a positive interest and whose interest is declining. And, and as most people would say, there comes a point where you've just got to freaking pick up the phone. So, digital marketing and the analytics, I spoke about, and all this, what you've spoken about as well, Jeb and Stefan, these are just pathfinders. But there is a point where, you're going to have to pick up the phone. So, and that's, that is just the nature of the beast. We're just trying to make that process a bit more efficient.
And that warm call is much more pleasant than if it's cold. So if they've been looking at your website and reading your social and following the fund, it's not a hard call to make.
And you know that information already because of your digital analytics. Yeah. Okay. What are the major mistakes to avoid?
I think not having a plan is one, right? And that's the obvious. Major mistakes is, and I know this sounds repetitive, knowing the difference between persistence and annoyance, and understanding. I think that the fund manager, as much as they think that they walk on water, that the allocators have 1,000 emails from new funds every day, and they will get to you if they are truly interested in your product and you've made a proper case for it. They will get back to you. It's not going to be instantaneous. It is not a Bloomberg chat session. It is not going to be pinged in, pinged out. Good things take time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's focusing on, whatever your strategy is, you think about it, sit down. Why are you launching this strategy? If you don't know why and for whom you're launching this strategy, then don't do it. If you launch a fund, get everything up and running, then you're going to sit down and think, who should we target? Well, then you've done it wrong. So that's one of the biggest mistakes, and it's a very common mistake. Work out who do you want to serve, how can you serve them, and then things are kind of easy in a way where, okay, you know what you're in for, what you should do. But most people just go out and talk to any kind of investor who they might think might be an investor, and that's a huge waste of time and effort. There's also this thing with a first impression. You'd never get a second chance. I mean, this goes across any marketing, but if you're not ready to talk to really important investors, don't talk to them then, because you're not going to get a second chance, because they're going to remember like, oh yeah, that was that rubbish team or that rubbish strategy or whatever it is. Don't waste that opportunity. Really think about what you do before you do it.
Right. Great questions coming, guys. What's the best bit of digital marketing you've seen from an investment manager recently? And any campaign. Stacey, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's brilliant, and obviously she's a placement agent or third-party marketer, but I don't know her clients, but I'm sure her clients must be very happy with the way she manages to get into investors, even people she didn't know before. And obviously it's not just Stacey, it's a whole team at Habener. But I think that's something that I sit here across the other side of the world and I'm thinking, damn, these people are good. So they're all about storytelling, all about looking at which investor fits this. What's the story? How can we get it in front of the right people? It's all about boutique, focus, niche. I really like what they do. And almost everything they do is
on Instagram and LinkedIn, and she's great. And last year we did an expert session with her, and it was incredibly useful. Incredibly useful. Jeb, what about yourself? What have you seen that tickled you?
Oh, nothing jumps out in particular, but I think, from what I've seen across is people really starting to adopt the authenticity and
Yeah,
posting
I agree.
videos of themselves in just real form, talking about why they have a passion for the strategy they have. And that comes across, that authenticity of loving what you do,
Yeah.
really comes across and builds, I think, a human connection through the socials and having videos up.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, one last question from Christine. What's the appropriate frequency for email campaigns? You may have missed this, but there is a slide on this. It is, most people want emails about products and strategies and investment approaches. Weekly or as needed is kind of the frequency. And that's from expensive data that we spend our money on. So it must be. Stacey Habner is the, you can look on LinkedIn. What's the spelling? Somebody's got a spelling on the chat, Stefan.
Havener.
All right, let me send it to everybody. Are we on commission from Stacey, guys? I mean, come on.
No. I mean, I found her on LinkedIn. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had no connection.
It's Stacey. Is it EY?
That just proves the point.
Stacey
Habner.
You know what, guys? Everybody on the call, I will put it on the replay email. And I won't butcher her name, but I'll put a link to her and the presentation on this on the replay email. Okay. Right, everybody. Well, we are almost at the hour. So everybody, thank you very, very much for joining us. Stefan, Jeb, thank you again for being so generous with your time. I'm sure everyone who is on this and on the replay will really, really find value in this. So gentlemen, once again, thank you all very much. And thank you to our audience.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.